Hello, my name is Pickles, and today I am going to tell you all why I declined starring in the 1984 sci-fi horror movie The Terminator. It is quite the swell story and will probably reveal some never-before-heard facts about the movie. So whip out your dicks and gather round and listen to the tale. I remember it well, back in the early 80s, when I was working in the gay porno industry and finally had my first smash hit, Dick Suckers 2, The Dildo Connection. Pretty soon I was approached by my agent, who suggested that perhaps I should get my toes wet in a regular non-pornographic film. He informed me there was a low-budget sci-fi horror movie in production called The Terminator, and that they were looking for someone to play the villain. With the recent success of the Star Wars movies that I almost starred in a few years earlier, science fiction was becoming a more popular genre, and I figured starring in a low-budget B-movie by a hardly known director would be a good way to get started. So I took a trip to LA and met up with the producer, a then upstart James Cameron. We talked for a bit and he laid out the story about how he was in Italy working on Piranha 2 and he had a fever dream where he saw a metal skeleton rising out of fire, and from that he would go on to write the story for The Terminator, which is about a cyborg from the future coming back to kill the future leader of the Resistance's mother, Sarah Connor. Hearing that the film would be about me being an unstoppable cyborg coming back in time to kill a woman would give me a massive boner, but I digress. After talking to James Cameron for a bit, he thought I was the perfect fit for the role of the Terminator. Now, as you know, that sexy hunk of man-meat known as Arnold Schwarzenegger ended up playing the Terminator, and some of you may even know that prior to that O.J. Simpson was considered for the part, but was declined, because James Cameron didn't think he would make a believable killer. Ha ha ha, that comment didn't age well, but anyway, I was brought on the project after they declined the other guys, but before Arnold Schwarzenegger was brought on, so you sexy faggots have a time frame of when this all went down. James Cameron was surprisingly open to suggestions from the cast, assuming it fit within his artistic vision, so that would give me plenty of opportunity to give my own swell input. Anyway, the movie opens with a scene from the future where a bunch of humans and machines are fighting before giving a message that the final battle of the war would not take place in the future, but in the past. This is followed up by the Terminator arriving in 1984 completely naked. The series of scenes were nearly perfect, as is, though I suggested it might be more swell if the Terminator was grasping his massive boner when he comes through the time portal. James Cameron, having read my prior filmography, reminded me this movie is not a porno, and that the reason I was naked was because nothing artificial can go through the time portal. I relented in this, of course. The next scene stars the Terminator going up to a group of punks who think he's either a drunk or a crazy, since he's walking around in the middle of the night naked too, where I ask them to take off their clothes. James Cameron loved the way I asked them to take off their clothes, saying that I seemed like a natural. Ha ha, if only he knew. Anyway, the punks would say "fuck you asshole" and then whip out some knives and try to stab me, before I would push two of them aside, then punch through the chest of the third, instantly killing him before one of the other two would give me his clothes in fear. I suggested to James Cameron that he could make the scene much more swell if he instead had me grab their knives and use them as dildos like and instead of penetrating the punk's chest with my fist, I instead penetrate his ass with my cock like and James Cameron said the concept was interesting, but that I am supposed to be a killer cyborg, not a gay rapist cyborg, and the scene would remain as he planned. Such a shame. After that scene I wouldn't be seen for a while, and it would focus mainly on Kyle Reese, who was a super sexy veteran soldier from the future sent back to protect Sarah, and that skank Sarah herself. After that the scene would switch to the Terminator hijacking a car by busting in the window and ripping open the steering column to start the car. I however thought I could add a bit of comedy to the scene by instead busting open the window with my cock like smack 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 smack, then sticking my cock in the ignition to start the car like to which James Cameron said no, unfortunately. After a brief scene showing Sarah Connor hating her job, it would cut back to the Terminator entering a gun store and asking the clerk for all sorts of guns before murdering the clerk in cold blood. I however thought the scene would be much more swell if instead I was in a sex shop asking the clerk for various sex toys to use as weapons, before having some gay poopy butt sex with the clerk like the Uzi 9mm phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range bag. That was swell. Once more James Cameron denied my request. After that the Terminator would drive up to a payphone and push the guy talking out of the way to read the phone book to find the location of Sarah Connor. I would instead suggest that it be a woman using the payphone, and that I smack her to the side with my cock, like smack 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 smack, and to my surprise James Cameron said he loved the idea. However, after I left the film they had to reshoot the scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger and filmed the version you see in the final edit. Immediately after that I would visit a neighborhood and find Sarah Connor's house, only it's a different Sarah Connor, and gun her down in cold blood in broad daylight. The scene remained almost unchanged in the final movie other than replacing myself with Arnold Schwarzenegger and having him use his hand to bust the door down instead of my cock. After a bunch of scenes featuring Sarah and Kyle, before she knows he is the protector and thinks he's a serial killer, it would shift to a scene of Sarah's roommate having sex with her boyfriend Matt, before she gets up to get a snack, while listening to music in a cassette player, while her boyfriend lays down in the bed. In the finished movie, the Terminator busts through the door and beats the shit out of and kills Matt before gunning down Sarah's roommate Ginger, then hearing the real Sarah in the answering machine saying she is hiding out in the Club Tech Noir before leaving. If I had my swell way, the part where I mow down Ginger would remain the same, but instead of beating up and killing her boyfriend Matt, I instead find him in bed and start raping him like don't make me mess you up man bag. That was swell. After a few scenes of Sarah being scared in the club and the cops talking, I would head over to Tech Noir to kill Sarah. In the regular movie the Terminator would walk in the club and break the bouncer's hand when he tried to stop him, before proceeding to search the club for Sarah, before finding her and whipping out a gun to shoot her in the head, when Kyle Reese whips out a shotgun and shoots the Terminator, before he pulls out a machine gun, because this takes place in America, and starts mowing down the clubbers in an attempt to kill Kyle and Sarah, to which they will escape and a car chase scene would happen. If I had my way, the scene would be mostly unchanged besides the fact it took place in a gay strip club, only instead of breaking the bouncer's hand, then later punching through the windshield in the car chase scene, I would instead knock out the bouncer with my dick like smack 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 and bust through the windshield with my cock like smack 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 smack. James Cameron said knocking out the bouncer with my dick was an interesting concept, but I would still need to break through the windshield with my fist. Oh well, 1 out of 2 isn't bad. In the final film, after they got Arnold Schwarzenegger to play the Terminator, they reverted to the original idea of him breaking the bouncer's hand. My concept would be revisited in the third Terminator movie when the T-800 comes back and gets his clothes from a gay stripper, but I digress. After some other scenes featuring the other characters, it would cut back to the Terminator at his hideout cutting open his arm to repair himself before also removing his eye to expose the robot eye below it with some puppetry that hasn't aged that well. The part where I cut out my eye would remain unchanged, however the part where I cut open my arms to repair myself, I instead suggested I open up my boner and fix anything broken inside. James Cameron told me that was impossible, as they couldn't show too much genitalia, even if it was only a puppet. Such a shame. After some scenes in the police station, where the cops don't believe Kyle's story about machines taking over in the future, the next scene the Terminator would appear is when he arrives at the police station and utters the iconic "I'll be back" line to the guy at the desk before driving a car through the front of the building, then gunning down all the cops inside the police station, only just missing Kyle and Sarah. My version of the scene would have been far sweller however. In my version of the scene, it opens the same only instead of saying "I'll be back," I would instead say "I'll be back" in your ass before busting through the window and raping the guy at the desk like a bag. That was swell. Just then all of the cops will become alerted to me and whip out their guns to try and stop me. However the bullets will deal no damage and I will methodically rape all of them like knocking out any female officers like smack 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 back to raping the male officers like honestly this doesn't sound that different than your average group Pickles goes to video. I also look like a badass when I am raping the cops thanks to my leather jacket and sunglasses bag. That was swell. Like in the normal movie, I would just miss Sarah and Kyle once again. James Cameron said the scene needed shot value and that I had to actually kill the cops, so my version was ultimately canned in favor of me gunning down all the dog bots. Most of the next scenes would consist of Kyle and Sarah bonding. However, there is a brief scene where I am looking through Sarah's phone book when I am interrupted by the janitor asking if I have a dead cat in there, to which the Terminator responds "fuck you asshole" before walking out of the apartment fully armed, shocking some black guy in the hallway. In my version of the scene it would have started the same, only instead of telling the janitor "fuck you asshole" I would say "come on in" before proceeding to rape him like and then leaving, only stopping to give the black guy in the hallway a quick fuck like a bag. That lost swell. James Cameron denied this, though saying that it would be much more funny if I told the janitor to fuck off. Oh well, I won't deny it lost quite the humorous scene. Anyway, after that there would be some scenes of Kyle and Sarah at the hotel, where Kyle goes out to get supplies. Then the Terminator tricks Sarah into revealing her location thinking he was her mother. Then, when Kyle gets back they make some bombs, before fucking each other like and going to bed. As you could guess, I found this scene rather stupid, and asked if instead I could bust open the door and, in order to assure that Sarah escapes, Kyle would have sex with the Terminator and we would fuck like a bag. That lost swell. James Cameron said that lost quite impossible, as Kyle is supposed to be John Connor's father, so him and Sarah have to fuck, and that I would instead just try to kill them and they escape. Once again, this pissed me off greatly, but I was confident James Cameron had some epic ending in store, so I dealt with it. At least I wouldn't be forced to fuck a woman. Anyway, after that is another chase scene, and eventually the Terminator hijacks a huge truck telling the driver to get out, while looking creepy, since half his skin is melted off. Because this is a Hollywood movie, the truck is also really explosive, and Kyle would put one of the bombs he made in it and it would explode in a huge ball of flames. While the scene was mostly the same, instead of telling the truck driver to get out, I would instead just smack him out with my cop like smack smack smack. James Cameron once again thought it would be funnier if I just told him to get out, so he didn't go with my idea. At the end Sarah and Kyle think they defeated the Terminator, only for it to rise out of the fires of the wreckage just like in James Cameron's dream, with only its metal skeleton, before it would chase them into some kind of machine plant. Eventually Kyle would stand up to the Terminator, so Sarah can escape, but the Terminator would kick Kyle's ass. Kyle would then shove one of the homemade grenades into the Terminator's chest and it would blow it up. My version was almost identical, only instead of shoving the grenade in his chest, he shoves it up his ass. After that Sarah will cry, because Kyle's dead, and then be surprised by the upper half of the Terminator that was still functional trying to kill her. Despite being badly wounded she would lead to a hydraulic press and then crush it, leaving only its arm and CPU intact. I told James Cameron it would be much more swell if instead of the arm reaching for her, it would instead be a cold metal synth cock coming to smack her when she defeated it. He once more denied me. After that I was excited to hear how, even though it was defeated, the Terminator persevered and succeeded in his mission, since Sarah would die on the factory floor due to blood loss. However, James Cameron told me that what he had planned was Sarah to run away and become all strong and powerful and all that. Upon hearing this I was taken aback. I asked him, why the fuck would you make a whole movie about an unstoppable killing machine on a mission to kill someone, only for it to fail at the very end? He told me that was his vision and that it was too bad. If I didn't like it, he was sticking with it. I told him there is no way I am starring in a movie where that happened, and proceeded to walk out. Well, as you all know, The Terminator went on to be a massive success and launched James Cameron's directing career, which is swell, though a shame it didn't start my non-porno acting career. I would have to later wait until the release of Rugrats in 1991 for that. And I must say The Terminator was a swell movie, in spite of Sarah Connor living through it. I think the swellest parts were the parts where Arnold Schwarzenegger gunned down female secondary characters, even though I know some of the other scenes people like more. But anyway, hopefully that gave you great insight into some of the ideas the movie originally had, as well as why I ultimately declined starring in it. Until next time my sexy faggots.